What's up guys, today I'm going to show you how to replace your boosted board belt, and typically you want to do this whenever it snaps like this, or if you're super precautious, whenever it starts to have little vertical tears in it like this. So the boosted belt service kit comes with almost everything you need except for a skate tool, which you can substitute with anything you have that has a 1/2 inch socket. Inside you'll find 2 new belts, a 9/64 hex wrench, and 6 socket cap screws. And you can buy this belt service kit on boostedboards.com, or you can get it from War Skate, which has more shipping options, whatever works for you. And if you've watched my previous video on changing the rear wheel bearings, then the process is pretty similar. We're going to start by loosening the tension on the belt by loosening the top and bottom socket cap screws. And once you find it, you only need to do this about a 1/4 turn. Once you've done that, you're going to want to close this gap here, which is going to loosen the tension on the belt. You're going to want to keep your hex wrench in your right hand and take your left hand to compress the motor mount. This may take a lot of effort depending on how strong you are. And once you've done that, you're going to want to take your skate tool and start taking off the wheel. And just a reminder, if you still use regular bearings, then watch out for your spacers flying off once you take off the axle nut. Make sure you don't lose your axle nut and just put it somewhere where you won't lose it. Next, you're going to just take off your wheel by just spinning it off basically. And again, if you use regular bearings, watch out for your spacer. There should be somewhere around there. Then you're going to want to take your 9/64 hex wrench and start taking out these screws completely. And do note, once you do this, you should not use them again. Boosted recommend to use the ones that they provide in the belt service kit, because the nylon patch that's on these screws helps keep it from vibrating, and when you take them out fully, it can lose that patch and make them more prone to falling out, which is not fun because it makes a lot of noise when they're out. If you just saw the spring pop back once I did it again. And when you're doing the last screw, do note that once you do this, this cap is going to kind of fall off. You're going to want to make sure you don't pull down on it at all, or else you're going to lose, or the springs will pop out. They're in the back there, and it's a little bit tricky to get them back on. So when you're doing this, just know that once this last screw here is out, that you're going to want to hold on to this a little bit and make sure it doesn't just kind of slide off. Once that's off, you can let the cap go back a little bit just to expose the belt. And you can let it hang like this just as long as you don't pull on it. The springs won't pop out. Then go ahead and take your new belt and just put it on just like you took it off. Then at this point, you're going to want to take your new socket cap screws and start screwing in the last one, so this cap doesn't wiggle around as much. Also, you're going to need to tension this or compress this a little bit to get this to fit into its first slot. As you can see, it can be a little bit difficult to get it in. You just kind of have to find the slot by feeling it out a bit. Then you're going to want to take your other socket cap screws and go ahead and put them in. But do notice that there's a big gap here, so it's really tight right now. So you're going to want to compress it again while you're putting in this first screw, because that's what's going to keep it in place so you can put the wheel back on. So that's the gap you should be going after. And just put on your other one too. Once you're done with that, go ahead and put back on your wheel. And if you use regular bearings, you may have to play around with the spacer a little bit to get the wheel to go through the axle. Then just go ahead and start letting the wheel catch the belt. And every time you turn it, just start pressing it in a little bit. And that's starting to put the other big pulley bearing in place. Then go ahead and put back on your axle nut. And make sure you don't torque it once it gets to this bottoming out point. Lastly, you're going to want to auto tension the belt by loosening whichever screw you have tight still. And just to make sure it adjusts to the new belt, just go ahead and compress it in and out. And there you go. And also make sure to tighten them back. One thing you may notice after installing a new belt and going on a ride is that when you're just rolling the board regularly, you may notice that it squeaks really loud. And this is due to the belt being new, it's just getting worn in. I actually contacted Boosted Support and they said that it's perfectly normal to have it sound like this because I sent them a video. So don't worry if your belt is starting to squeak like this, you shouldn't be able to hear it when you're riding. That's a different issue. Like when your belt starts to get a crack, like a really big crack in it, it'll start to make a high-pitched kind of squeak that you can hear when you're riding. So don't worry if you hear it going like this when you just roll the board around. It's perfectly normal and should be fine. So a couple of tips to make your belts last longer is: one, don't ride with a loose belt like this. And over time, your belts will always kind of start loosening themselves, so you want to make sure you check the tension. And to retension the belts, just like when you're taking off the wheel and all of that, you just got to loosen the screws here and it'll tension itself back. So like right now I have it tightened right here. So if I do this, if you heard that, it just popped back to the proper tension that the springs set. So generally when you ride with loose belts, what will happen is your braking will be a lot less effective, but your acceleration will be slightly increased. But it isn't safe to ride around with kind of faulty brakes, because you could run into a situation where you have to brake really fast, and if your belt slips or something like that, you're kind of screwed. So don't do that. Also, if you ride on the road a lot or in bike lanes, watch out for the small rocks that are on the side of the road, because if you ride over them for a long time, it can start to wear down the belt faster, and even more exponentially if you start like sliding or brake hard on them. It can really mess up the belts, and that's what actually made mine snap a little bit faster than they usually should. So just keep that in mind. And if you ride over rough surfaces a lot, then you'll probably find that you'll lose one or two of these socket cap screws. So it's a good idea to buy a spare pack so you don't have to pay for a kit. And I've lost a lot of socket cap screws, mainly because I don't pay attention when I start hearing the noise that it makes when one is getting a little bit loose. And in general, this doesn't happen unless, again, you ride over like cobblestone or something like that, like I do on my commute a lot, and I don't mind it. I just make sure that I check to make sure that these are always tight. But this is a good idea if you don't want to spend $25 every time you lose a screw. So I'll link them in the description. And that is it. If you like this video, subscribe. And for those of you that are curious about my carbon fiber vinyl I have going on here, I'll be making a video about it once I redo it, since it's getting a little worn. So just let me know any other video suggestions you have for me, and thanks for watching.